We walk on for hours. After a long time in the dark, we come to a stop. We should rest for a moment. Hydrate? Very well then. We've seen this game before, but it sounds cool so far. Yeah, you know, it's a bit of romance, a bit of murder, a bit of mystery. Yeah, so I'm certainly interested to see where it's going to pivot after the trial. You've got to have a third act. I do not wish for the devil's wound to reopen from overexertion. My what? I keep a pointed silence, which extends to reveal the gaps in Barkwin's story. There is no wound upon my form, which indicates you knew the former. You say a wound in a manner that it suggests it was a recurring concern, not a death blow. If the wound occurred before death, and you were thus familiar with my prior form in life, I see that time has not improved you. I knew you before you were Milton. You worked in your embassy of brass and puffer and connived against my government. As I connived against yours. I came to know your movements, your methodology, as I knew the pace of my own heart. 110 beats per minute. You'd make it go faster if you could. You wish to linger in my city and know its history. Its secrets. Poetry, you said? Politics, I thought. You lacked advancement on your own merits. I was in a similar position. My worth was overlooked. Details don't matter. The fourth is long dead now. We're here for Milton. The rest is gone. Here we linger, amongst the ruins of my city. Milton, as he calls himself, is permitted reinvention. I must endure the burden of memory. You were not given the advancement you sought. You wanted me to expedite your promotion. Death, you said, was the only way. The devil who dies by his own hand is accorded no such privilege. If she had difficulty murdering a lover? Damn. It's just difficult killing your lover. My what? I, Barkwin of the Scriptoria, keeper of the bestiaries, first scribe and illuminator, and Sluki? She lets out a peal of laughter. It is a moment before she recovers her breath. You are lying. But on what particular? And if it were hope or action, I cannot tell. Suppose it must have come to an end, whatever we shared. Given you killed me, I was never your lover. Let us be clear on that. And I slew you at your own request. You used my smuggling contacts to bring you a rotten candle from hell. Large as a tuber, pale as a drowned corpse. It arrived on a plaquin, pulled by a silver-shod horses, whose manes were lambent flame. You carved it into an effigy of yourself. There were silks and samite around the places on which you made me inscribe. You guided my hand as I drew sigils around your forehead, across your chest, on the underside of your lips. How very accommodating of me. And my death, I am agog to know how you did it. Once you had prepared yourself to your satisfaction, you bade me stab you with a knife of black glass. Around the pommel were further sigils, cold as frost, on a mountain's back. I do not know what happened next. You made me look away. I remember only the sound of wings. That is enough. I wonder if you could be induced to remember more clearly. I do recall dressing the effigy, its flesh all waxy. When I pressed the nib of my pen into it, it sank. Like butter, I imagine. Like overcooked fish the flesh breaking with each incision. You told me I had to read it. Poetry. The death of King Gizar, the hidden kingdom whence he would return. The secret version of Jangar, the king falls in paradise. You told me I must seek to instruct the effigy in all the things you ought to be, and remind it of all the conduct you had engaged in that would best be left behind. Wonder what awful things you seek to purge yourself of now. Sins conducted in your salon, upon the sedans. Those are not sins, they are diversions. And where I have offered a successful temptation, I would hardly discard the cherished memory. You've described one death. There was another. One nowhere near so neat. No, it was not. It is not much further. We move deeper into the caverns. There's no end to the depths below London, it seems. The scent of resin grows stronger. Eerie phosphorescence illuminates our way. At last, we emerge in a cavern where amber encrusts the walls. A wide pool of it sits in the center. Are we near? I'm starting to think I can hear the Z. We are here. And you have stashed my corpse where exactly? Such between stalactites, concealed behind pillars of amber? No, you are here. She gestures toward the pool. Oh, I thought she was about to just stab him and completely just kill him right here. That would have been funny. It's like, oh yeah, I know where your corpse is. Fucking kills you. There you go. There's your corpse. That would have been amazing. I kind of hope it still goes that way though. I have no idea what's going on, but I love the voices. You're like, aw, thank you. Half the fun of visual novels like this is getting practice of various voices. What do you mean, in there? Tacklin and I kept watch when the city fell. We crept out to see what we could find. Before we retreated, we found you. Or some of you. I suppose you did not have warning that this was to come. I could not find an effigy amidst the pieces. No, the masters denied us that courtesy. So, you scooped me up and deposited me in here? No, we tried to perform the resurrection to the best of my recollection. The rubbery men are a collective. Together, they dream of exiled, their lost home, and 100 sunken things besides. I have been inducted into this communion. I thought with my memories of you, we might substitute the effigy. Commingle you with the chorus, recover what was lost. I see. No, I don't see at all. You did this from the goodness of your heart? Arquin is silent. Her gaze is fixed upon the deep pool of floating amber. Milton needs to know what happened. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here just eating popcorn while this drama plays out. Because Barquin is so fucking tsundere. She's been tsundere in like every single interaction we've seen her between us, between other characters. She just is a person that has a hate on for everybody. Ellipsis. I stood vigil for him once. I was furious he had been so careless as to die again. There had been a debt between us. It was not yet repaid. There. Does that satisfy? At least, I do not think you were my enemy, Barquin of the Force. Is there anything more to see than my discarded skeleton? You shall dream of it. Come. The pool awaits, serene as distant starlight. Darkwing produces a vial of honey, a sickly golden hue in the partial light. It is sweet as spun sugar, as viscous as blood. My hackles rise as it washes down my throat. I see Milton drink and Barquin. And then they are gone. But by then, I too am elsewhere. I float deep in a rubbery dream. The wash of the ocean overwhelms me. It is an ocean older and farther than any I have ever known. Distant stars wheel above me. Older generations lurk below. I see a place between two moons catching light in hues of electric and melancholy I do not recognize. I'm not alone here. The figures float in the ocean above and below me. Arquin. A choir of rubbery men. A devil's bones. Ribs like a cathedral raised to the sky. They don't see me. I am a spyglass oscillating in the undertow. They swim in strange patterns, far away, moving further from each other. Follow the figures. I trace their movements in the dream. Chocolate moves amidst a range of other rubbery men, like a shoal. Green skin, they flash in the waves like scattered jade. They surround a corpse larger than they. A sound like singing emanates from the choir of rubbery men. It sounds as though it comes from very far away. Focus on the corpse. They hold it aloft. Its body is ruined, limbs pierced by stalactite and shale. I see horns and nubs that suggest they might once have been wings. There's a skull of many eyes. One hand clutches a long string instrument made of devil bone. The rubberies draw amber along the corpse in resinous swirls. Bones melt, shift, are sculpted. Tentacles do the work of fingers, but more dexterous. Tentacles move through, within, beneath. The corpse stirs. It is not as it was. It will not remain. Already, the rubbery men are lamenting. The devil rises, but not whole. So much sloughs away. Swirls of it drift in the ocean. The rubberies move after. The devil goes to find itself alone. I wake. Milton and Barquin are beside me. So, you botched my resurrection. You stand before me. Less handsome, perhaps, but passable. I followed your instructions to the letter. It is not my fault that this time you were unprepared. Improvisation was necessary. So instead you bisected me, split me from what was good about myself. Saints incarnate, I was beautiful, magnificent. The timbre of my voice, the extent of my reach. My speech was music, my whispers song. What I willed, that those heard me danced. And now I am thus. I could have left you, smeared under the walls of the shrine of the Blue Haven. A fitting end for one who had worked to see my city fall. I did not need to waste my time dragging your mangled corpse pieces from the ruin. I did not need to beg the rubbery men to lend your voice to the chorus. I did not need to see the expression on your face as we succeeded. And know that we had not succeeded at all. I could have gone lifetimes without knowing you and been happier. Barkwin for an apology? Milton to thank Barkwin? And if Milton has all he needs... Was that what you needed to find? Needed? Quite the tonic. In your stories, the children often suffer disappointment when failing to measure up to their forebearers. It was an emotion I failed to fully comprehend. But now I feel a curious kinship, having failed to live up to myself. I will say what is needed at your trial. I know how to prepare my way now. Make right what was done wrong. Do not interfere in infernal affairs again, Barkwin. He makes for the cave mouth, indicating for me to follow. Barkwin remains behind, gazing into the pool. All right. All that's left is the trial now. We've got all the pieces. I'm gonna put my... You know what? We'll drop a lapel. Cute little rock guy. Yeah! It's Algernon, a rat of exceptional breeding. He is an aristic rat. This fucking game. There isn't much time left before Archie's trial. One day left. Wish we'd found a way to break him out. Don't worry. I've discovered who's really to blame. I intend to tell Harjeet as much. If you say so. I rely on you not letting this go wrong. There are no more mushrooms on my plate. Alright. Time to save our friend. The day before Christmas. Alright, what's the newspaper headline? Come see the Tristram Bagley's newest opera. Witness the rise of a prodigy. That's kind of, that's not weird at all. We need to present my theory of murder to Harjeet. Click, 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 click. I'm satisfied. There you are, Dreki. There's something I wish to discuss. I believe I know what happened and why. And you're sure about this? If I act on it, won't be able to help if you decide you had it wrong. I'm sure. Get a good night's sleep. Do whatever else you mean to do. Tomorrow, case will be heard. Ooh, alright. In this case, I thought it would go straight to the trial. Let's deliver our rat story and see if that does anything. Don't mind me if I just feed a bit of cheese your hat there. Maybe out of the sardines, or I'll have to make do with the cheddar. Algernon doffs his own small cap to Ferret. Ferret relaxes slightly. I lay out the beginnings of my story, how the rats might have been trained and converted long ago. Now, Algernon here tells me that the rats might already have a dose of religion. Might be enough to give us an in. Well, as silly as it sounds, when Westminster School fell, with me in it, it was all washed out to sea. I found myself clinging on a school desk and subsisting on chalk. Far below the water, I saw a glow, like gold beneath the waters. Thought I'd spied a man, much, much too large. Held a goldsmith's lens and a tail, waved me on. Thought it a dream, as one has when on the verge of death. I suppose this shine introduced himself? No. Seems you might have better manners. Rules of ordinary etiquette are famously inapplicable to holy men. Much I hate to bother on my busy bothering God. Might be the vicar's our next best bet. Alright. Barrett, what you got to sell? I don't want anything. Goodbye, Ferret. Come back soon. Time to head home. Dwells underwater? Interesting. I cannot come along to the trial. You can't bring Archie home afterwards. Well, come and tell me immediately. I want to send him something in prison for his last meal. If it is his last meal. Dinner is a very quiet affair from there. Alright, what's gonna happen at the trial? It's gotta be some big twist is about to go down. It's Christmas. It's Crimbus. Yay! We're due in court this morning. Odd choice to hold a trial on Christmas Day, but you know, legal system be how it is. Yeah, we'll bring the aristocrat. The old Bailey. Yeah, attend the trial. Quiet, order, sit down. I'm unhappily aware that most of you have forgotten how to conduct yourself in a courtroom. If in fact you ever knew. Those of you new to Her Majesty's justice, find yourself in a freshly repaired Old Bailey. Apparently, we're to count ourselves fortunate that it is in good enough condition for us to even meet here. We're gathered here to try Mr. Archibald Reed, Miss Phoebe Riley, and Mr. Milton on the charge of murdering David Landau. Glance up at Archie. Archie's frowning slightly at Milton's direction, as though trying to work out how this is going to complicate the case. We also find ourselves able to welcome the murder victim among us. He is unusually hale for one in his position. Sir Landau, if you would. Go around him for evidence and to lend a certain moral tone to the proceedings. I've often found that a murder trial devolves into chaos in a carnival atmosphere. But I'm certain all that was formerly lacking was the presence of the victim. Mr. Landau, if you could look a bit more murdered, that would be ideal. We must now turn to matters over to our prosecuting barrister. Small correction, my lord. Though Mr. Reed is required to be present due to his original arrest, the prosecution has concluded that the fault lies elsewhere, and Mr. Reed was not, as we first thought, a co-conspirator.
Oh, I see. Members of the jury, please consider that Mr. Archibald Reed is innocent in this matter.
David looks as though it is a social embarrassment to be found alive after his murder. Barrister makes David recount the tale of his death. So far, it's as much as I've heard before, laying out the question of opportunities and visits to the deceased bedchamber. The critical question appears to be Mr. Landau, who had the opportunity to poison you. You were ill and were alone most of the day before you died?
I was.
But you saw a few people.
My housekeeper, Phoebe Riley, came to see the candles, and Mr. Reed, who was attending me as a doctor. Mr. Reed came and gave me a dose of medicine.
Was this the first time Mr. Reed attended to you?
No, he had been treating me for some days.
But you had not recovered?
Not entirely, but his treatments had reduced my pain.
Common situation, if you ask me.
Let the audience be silent if it does not wish to be excused.
And were those the only people who entered your room?
Yes. My sister was in the house, though I think she did not come into the room. I sometimes could hear voices outside. I believe her friend Mr. Milton was present that day, and perhaps also her dressmaker, A.V. Fitzclarret.
And none of them sent you messages, gifts, or food? Perhaps carried to you by your housekeeper?
No.
In fact, you and Milton were not on friendly terms.
I distrusted his reasons for visiting my sister.
And he was aware of your disapproval?
Rachel was aware of it. She may have told him.
So he may have regarded you as an impediment to ends of his own, or simply disliked you as heartily as you dislike him.
It's possible.
Thank you, Mr. Landau. Miss Rachel Landau. My brother died in October, a few weeks after Yom Kippur. He'd been suffering considerably from the pain in his stomach. He'd been receiving treatment from Dr. Reed. Rachel describes the use of candles in her household, and the barrister questions Phoebe Riley as well to confirm that the candles are made with arsenic in their composition. I would like to also remind the jury of what we have already heard from the formerly deceased. A number of people were in the Landau's townhouse on the day of his death, including Milton, the personage of hellish origin.
You may just say devil.
It seemed impolite.
I believe it would be impolite to call him a demon. Those are creatures of quite a different genus. I take my knowledge of devilish etiquette from the pages of Unexpurgated Gazette. It may be imperfect.
At any rate, this devil appears to have been a regular visitor. Called to the stand, the Reverend Philophilus Withernick. Mr. Withernick, I understand you have some expertise in devils.
Yes?
Do you believe a devil might tempt someone to behave as they otherwise would not?
No.
No.
The faults in our souls are our own. Devil can at most bring out what is already latent within.
But might a devil encourage, say, a young woman to commit an act of violence?
He might, but if she did such an act, it would still be her sin. In this matter, the law is perhaps more forgiving than the church. Members of the jury, you must consider whether Milton was an accomplice to Miss Riley or a co-conspirator. State of Miss Riley's soul is for other authorities than ourselves. If in fact she still possesses a soul.
Thank you, Reverend Withernick.
You've heard the arguments of the prosecution. We now hear it from the defense.
Members of the jury, I have behaved as I behaved from the motives of hell, which I do not expect you to comprehend. But I will explain myself, and then I will engage in a human to interpret for you what I have done. David Landau died by the fumes of some arsenical candles. Phoebe Riley, you made the candles, following a household hint for candles that would burn brighter and more cheaply. Yes? You had initially no idea they might make anyone ill. And in fact, the Landau household all used the candles for a long time. Yes? During that time, David Landau fell subject to headaches and digestive ailments. Did you think that might be to do with the candles? Not till you pointed it out to me. There are all sorts of sicknesses down here. Now, sometime later, I became familiar with the household and observed its peculiarities. In particular, I noticed that Miss Riley was deeply unhappy. Oh, weren't you? I suppose so. You were in love with your employer, and you'd had some hope he reciprocated. But it became clear that his interest in you had been temporary. Yes? And then, Miss Riley, you happened to confide in me that you were worried David Landau might return to the surface. Thank you for the hydration. You seemed like you wouldn't tell anyone. No, I didn't tell anyone, Miss Riley, until now. But we've reached a point where frankness might spare your neck. Do you remember what I said to you then? You said that if David, so to speak, died in a harmless way, it wouldn't last long and he'd come back spry and well again. With nothing wrong with him? Except he'd be cured of wanting to go to the surface? You're truthful up until that last moment, Phoebe. Care to try again? With nothing wrong with him except, well, that he couldn't go back to the surface? I suppose you didn't say he'd stop wanting to. No, I didn't say that. But we all have in us wants things now and then that we can't have. I do not stir in my seat. The others in the room share the same solemn excitement. Phoebe, you thought you would be guaranteed Mr. Landau's presence. I suspected that the experience of death might have a clarifying effect on Mr. Landau's indecisive ethical mechanisms. I may have overestimated his capacity for the revitalization of that death affords. But I observed that he wished and intended to do well and gave himself great pain guessing at a mortal course. Yet the result was an obnoxious indecision that troubled himself and everyone around him. He desired, and in some sense loved his housekeeper. He knew he had transgressed his own code in seducing her. He had only had to face social disapproval, including most powerfully that of his sister. He might have gone ahead. Rachel's cheeks are flaming red, and she is watching Milton with a thunderous expression. But he also knew that he and Miss Riley are unequally matched, not only in class and religion, in education and position, but in the deeper resources of character. Oh, thank you kindly. David Landau entirely lacked the wellspring of hope that lives in Miss Riley. He knew that he might not be content with her as a wife. He told himself that meant she would not be happy with him as a husband. He was most certainly wrong. Phoebe's affection and her capacity for contentment are greater than Mr. Landau can easily imagine. I would not have insulted her if he'd gone on consulting his sister rather than his wife in matters of business. It would not have dented her joy if, as a family, They had avoided any social gatherings where they might be snubbed. She might have had a flicker of doubt if he had asked her to convert from her own faith to his.
No, I wouldn't have cared. I'd have done that for him, even that. There's Ruth in the Bible, isn't there? God doesn't think ill of those who take up the faith of their family. Though I asked Rachel once, not saying why, but just inquiring if there was a thing to baptism for becoming Jewish. She said they don't much look to have converts as a rule. I'd have done it though if he'd asked me. But you've ruined that for certain now. He'll not love me, and I killed him. How could he?
I say nothing. The moment ticks forward. That remains to be seen, but let us stick to the matter of the case. Phoebe decided to kill her employer. Slightly. Impermanently. With the greatest affection.
You didn't tell me how it would feel.
No one could have told you that, Phoebe. In any case, members of the jury, you should know that Phoebe did not have the means to kill even with her candles. They were too weak. They burned too fast. They did not give enough poisonous fumes. That is where I provided some assistance. I know a sigil that, written in the wax of a candle, will prolong its burning and strengthen its fire. I so inscribed all the candles meant for David Landau's bedroom. I keep still, as before. Were you surprised when David died, Phoebe?
I was a bit. I didn't think it would work. I don't think I could have done it if I did think it would work, to tell the truth. And then I thought he'd come back right away, which he didn't.
Thank you, Phoebe. For my part, I was alarmed that the family buried Mr. Landau so quickly. I was aware of the burial custom, but I also knew that dreams were coming to Londoners, warning them of the danger of premature burial. I, therefore, disinterred Mr. Landau and put him in a safe place to await his return. Mr. Landau, if you would. Where did you return to life, Mr. Landau?
I was on a bench in a mausoleum building adjoining the graveyard.
Did you not wonder how you got there?
I wondered about everything. That question was the very smallest of the mysteries. And if I'm meant to be grateful after you killed me in the first place...
No, I don't expect you to understand what I've done for you. Never mind, Mr. Landau. As for Mr. Landau's grave, I knew there was some chance his family would revisit it. Disinterring people had become faddish in London as the dreams against burial spread. So I placed in his grave a simulacrum grown in the swamps of the Lilymire, a false David to pacify anyone who looked for him. It will have decayed by now.
Whatever your reasoning, you appear to have confessed to every matter in consideration.
I have admitted to being the cause of these events, but neither the mens rea nor the actus reus was present for murder. I did not kill David Landau in a permanent fashion, nor did I intend to.
Assault, then.
Refinement, education. For devils to die and be reborn is a sacred and consequential thing. I no more assaulted David Landau than a surgeon would have done operating on a diseased limb. Happens to us all, doesn't it? Let the audience be silent if it does not wish to be excused.
Phoebe really had a reason to be vexed with me. I treated her as no housekeeper should be treated. And afterward, I expected her to resume her duties in an ordinary way. It disturbed the structure of our household and did not restore it to its proper form.
Do you mean to reply, Mr. Landau, that Miss Riley would have been justified in murdering you?
I mean, to imply her situation was untenable. And mine as well, if I am to be truthful.
Members of the jury, you have heard the argument. Which is very baffling, if I'm to be honest, but this seems to be our first trial since we collapsed into this Neath. An extraordinary argument, but an argument nonetheless. Now you must make a judgment. Was a murder done here? Was there only an accident? Has the prosecution entirely failed to make its case? You cannot convict beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must not convict at all. Time to hydrate.
It is a very long time before they come back. An agonizing time. Finally, the court returns. The jury proclaims Archie to be not guilty. Ta-da! But as to Phoebe and Milton, they are both found guilty and of deliberate murder.
Phoebe Riley, Milton, it's now my duty to sentence you. You have been found guilty of murder, a crime that carries the punishment of hanging, death by hanging.
My lord, I am grateful for this opportunity. A previous death was not satisfactory. I'd be glad to make another attempt. Especially if you'd be so good as to sentence only me.
So you take responsibility?
All the responsibility in the world. No one would have died without my intervention. I was the tempter and the instrument. I don't suppose you'd allow me to borrow your wig for my last days.
No, I would not!
Shame. In hell, it is a courtesy to lend your friends a little aspect of yourself before they die.
You and I, Mr. Milton, do not have an amicable relationship.
No. A shame. There is something to admire in your rude forensic craft. Nonetheless, send me out as a phoenix on his pyre. Gather the cinnamon and the Indian peppercorns.
The hangman relies only upon a rope. No fire is involved.
Attend the spectacle, my lord. I think you will find it satisfactorily flammable. Ooh, what's about to happen? Wait, what? I cannot quite believe it. I'm free of the ungulate, not to be executed. Not to have my good name turned to mud. I can't thank you enough, my friend. London's best off without Milton whispering in people's ears. Aye, it seems so. Believe in the return to the surface. Look for my family again. The transportation is frightfully expensive, I'm afraid. Perhaps David Landau will get his transport working after all. Give me a ride to the surface. Are we not going to get something from Milton? Okay. Before Milton's execution, we perform the rite to prepare his false body. It's set out in a room in the Devil's Townhouse, and we are permitted to visit it one by one to partake of the rite. The rites are very precise. I doubt you will do them correctly. I have dressed a corpse before. Recently. In fact, I cannot think why you have come. You were not invited, were you? Did you invite yourselves? You did not know Dreki in his days of power. You cannot restore him to anything that he misses. I like to think London taught him about subtle shades, about nuance. From our brief acquaintance, I imagine that was not among the literary gifts of the Fourth City. It is not of interest. I'm needed in the next room. I will try to leave things in a state you cannot ruin when it is your turn. Though London will flatten anything. Strange woman. I liked her. Or at least, it was easier when she was here. Easier for Rachel and Phoebe not to look at one another, she means. Avoid talking about doomed love affairs. I like it's just a whole bunch of avoid talking about stuff. Try to lighten the mood. We can distract ourselves with the handsome array of glassware and try not to listen to anything it says. Why did Milton ask us here? Doesn't he want to make his own death and rebirth to his own liking? It is meant to look like a concession, all the while requiring us to think about him even more than we already have. But I could not quite bring myself to say no. What do you mean to add, Phoebe? I wanted to ask him, the living Milton, about something he did before. And if he explains himself, I don't know what to do right. But he did. When everyone else was out. He embraced me once. And he let him call me by David's name, and I tell him I loved him. What a vile play. Was that before or after he told you how to poison my brother to death? Hold on, no, let this cook. I think he felt sorry for me. When you say he embraced you, how far did that go? What, are you jealous now? Angry he might have touched me more than he touched you? I am trying to measure the extent of the betrayal. It goes all the way to the horizon in every direction, it seems. There is no horizon. We live in a cave. I'm being called. I hope the writing implement is sharp enough to gouge in what I need Milton to remember in its next sulfurous life. I need to ask him whether he was playing at affection for my sake, or if it was his own. Can't change my own fate. It's possible to change his. And I'll write that he one day comes to rest like stone in a grass. That he finds an affection he can trust. I'm not supposed to come back this way after I've touched to the false corpse. But I had to... Well, I'm sorry for the display just now and for everything else. I think I understand. And I can't endure understanding. Not yet. Maybe when I've written out my own anger and sorrow, maybe then I'll be ready for Phoebe's and Milton's and my brothers. Maybe some years. Finally, my own turn comes, in a room hot with the scent of spices. Milton is waiting for me. This is my judgment on him. This is nothing. The traveler is returning home. Milton is hanged in the morning a few days later. Ooh, that cello. Love me the cello. The delay allows broadsheets to announce the spectacle of a devil being hanged. There's some skepticism here. What's the difference can it make whether the hanged is human or infernal? The rope is woven of silver cords. Sigil-stamped talismans are knotted into it, in jade and lapis and carnelian. Warehouses were ransacked for the raw materials of his execution. They say he hangs for a long time, not dying, though his neck is at the wrong angle. They say his body tears open in the end, Its contents scream into the sky. Promised him I would not go, and I cannot break the promise. Even if I wish to, it is not possible. Life is quieter after the trial, at least for a time. Christmas Day comes and goes. Hail flakes fall across London. They aren't exactly snow. Drizz's work at the ministry becomes more intense, more demanding. And soon, we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the fall. 1 year since February. Does it feel right to call this month February again? Damn, alright, we're skipping ahead a couple months. 1 day remains in the season of the Rose.